It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join News Director Paul David and News Editor Philip Catafamo as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics in Yavapai County that affect all our lives. And now here's today's Countywide.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Countywide.
It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of...
On today's show, we're talking consolidation, and my guest in studio today is Yavapai County School Superintendent Tim Carter. Mr. Carter, welcome back.
Good morning, Philip. Good to see you.
Well, we're always happy to have you, and we know that consolidation has been a very, very big topic for a little while around the county. People are currently voting on the consolidation, so we just thought we'd talk to you and see where we're at and what has been going on. I know you hosted some forums recently where some of our residents were able to go in and ask you specific questions about the consolidation. So we'll start off with that. How did those forums go, and what was the feedback?
Well, they went very well. We put on 6 around the county. We had over a 3-day period, we hosted 6 of those events. They weren't attended as well as I had originally anticipated. Part of the problem with that was that we tried to put those between when the ballots would, or the ballot would be received in the mail, and the time where they then had to be finalized. And so we had a very short window of time to work in. But we had some very good groups. They certainly asked some very good questions. We covered a lot of ground, and I think we also identified a couple of things that we just really hadn't thought about before.
And what does this consolidation, obviously there are multiple different districts that are involved in this consolidation, so what does this mean if this goes through? What does it mean for each district involved? And in all honesty, if it doesn't go through, what happens then on both ends?
Okay. Well, the statute that we used, which is Arizona Revised Statute 15459, outlines for us in many cases exactly what has to be provided to the voters and exactly what the outcome would be. There's been some interesting debate over some of the issues within that statute. I don't think that the legislature ever thought that you would have a union high school district that potentially would be divided where one of those feeder elementary schools would choose not to be involved, or the voters would choose for them not to be involved. And you would have one of the feeder schools in the high school that would then consolidate and also unify at the same time. So when you think about this, we have to kind of go back to the 1950s, because that's when Mingus Union was created. You had 2 distinct elementary school districts, neither of which had a high school, and it was difficult to send students to other locations, and so the logic was, let's create a union high school district only to provide 9 through 12 education. And so it really took 3 different entities to approve that. You had Cottonwood, Oak Creek, you had Clarkdale Jerome, and then of course the Union District became Mingus Union High School. So in this situation, it requires 3 different districts to approve of disbanding the union. And so the 3 districts that will be involved are those 3 specific districts, but one of them in kind of a roundabout way. And then there's a 4th district that's involved in it as well, and that's the Valley Academy of Career and Technology Education, which is the CTED, the Career and Technical Education District. And it is impacted simply because all 3 of those districts are part of that CTED district that provides CTED instruction at the high school level. So when we look at those districts, what will happen is that if it passes, Mingus Union will cease to exist.
Right.
I mean, it simply will stop functioning as a district. And the voters in Mingus Union are going to be voting on that question. Cottonwood, Oak Creek would cease to exist as a district. And those 2, Cottonwood, Oak Creek, and Mingus, would actually join together in the Cottonwood footprint in their districts. In their current district, and that would be what we are referring to as the new unified school district. Clarkdale Jerome would continue to function as an elementary district. It would change its function a little bit from the way it's funded, but it only really impacts from the standpoint that instead of their students automatically being able to go to Mingus as part of Mingus Union, they now would have to determine how they're going to educate their students. And we assumed, and that's what it was an assumption that at least in the very first year of operation, that those students would actually go to the unified district. That's completely going to be up to the Clarkdale Jerome board. And so if that assumption is wrong, many of the things that are in our pamphlet then would be wrong. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is when you're trying to look at what you have now and what would be. So for this to be successful, all 3 of those districts would have to vote yes. But they're going to be voting really on different effects. So when people are reviewing the consolidation plan, even though the ballot question is identical,
right,
the effect of that ballot question, and whether you vote yes or no, is where all of the real importance is. So for Mingus, if you voted yes, you're saying you want Mingus Union to cease to exist. You want the union to dissolve, and you want what was Mingus Union to become the high school in the new unified district. Cottonwood Oak Creek voters, if they voted yes, they're saying we want the union to dissolve as well, and we want to provide the elementary K-8 portion of that new unified district, which would then serve K-12, so the entire spectrum. That would leave Clarkdale Jerome a separate, distinct political subdivision. They would continue to provide K-8 instruction, but they now become responsible for their high school students. But they also have to vote to dissolve the union. Remember, it took 3 districts to create the union. In this case, will take 3 districts to resolve the union. So it will be interesting to see what happens. So if 2 districts pass it and 1 doesn't, then it doesn't pass. It is a very unique situation, but that is what the statute requires us to do.
Yeah, and you mentioned the assumptions, like you mentioned, you brought in an informational packet, and we will talk about this pamphlet, of course, when we get a little bit later in the show. But you talked about those assumptions. You know, the assumption is that these parents and kids, oh, new consolidation district, let's get them over to the district. But you're not playing into the other possibility, which is, oh, maybe I don't want to go. Maybe I don't want my kid to go to Mingus Union after there or after middle school. Let's go look at the Prescott schools. Let's go look at Bradshaw. Let's go look at Prescott High School. Maybe we're moving to the White Mountains and we're going to go down to Show Low or possibly even to in the same area, Camp Verde or Sedona, who aren't in those districts. So, and you talked about it. You know, you could have went through every single different scenario, and this packet would be about the size of the dictionary. But we've got a lot to talk about regarding this. You know, and we'll get to this pamphlet of course, less of a pamphlet, more of a packet, if you ask me, but chock full of information. And you kind of have to do something like this with something this big. You can't necessarily have just a quick paragraph sentence and then go right into, okay, start voting on it. You know, that's why you hosted the forums, and that's why we're having this show. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be back with Yavapai County School Superintendent Tim Carter to continue talking about consolidation right here on Countywide. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Hi, this is Greg at Verde Solar Power. You know, Arizona has lots of clean, renewable sunshine, and we want to help you take advantage of it with our quality solar installations, and we offer to beat any written offer on a residential solar electric system. So bring us your electric bill and let us show you how solar power will save you money. We're located conveniently here in the Verde Valley and are dedicated to helping the valley go solar. So remember, the energy solution comes up every morning.
So I just moved in with his family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already! You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
Orkin has pest control down to a science.
When your business chooses Orkin's Precision Protection Program, you get a tailored pest control program for your specific industry and environment.
Your business can benefit from over a century of experience, training, and scientific knowledge that define the Orkin man.
Maximum protection, minimum exposure, backed by one of the industry's most comprehensive guarantees.
Choose your locally owned and operated Northern Arizona Orkin and get more than an exterminator. Get an expert.
I want to welcome you back here to Countywide. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. On today's show, we're talking consolidation, and my guest in studio today is Yavapai County School Superintendent Tim Carter. In the first segment, we talked a little bit about the consolidation forums that Mr. Carter hosted, I believe, last month and a little bit into this month. And now we're going to shift over to some more consolidation conversation here, specifically some of the misconceptions. As I mentioned, you have issued out the informational pamphlet regarding the consolidation, but even reading through this, there's a lot of big words, especially for myself. No, but there's a lot of literature in here. This is a very, very big thing to talk about. And some people might have heard some things about the consolidation. Are there any misconceptions around it? Are there any rumors going around? Where are we with that?
Well, I think there are always misconceptions when you're dealing with something like this. One of the I think areas that had probably generated the most conversation, and there are some misperceptions, is that with a consolidation, you're going to save a large amount of money. Well, if we look at what's happened in Arizona and in other states, in general, that's not true. In general, it is pretty much a wash. What will happen with the district is that there will be restructuring of it, and the dollars that are being used in a particular way now may be used very differently in the future. But since the funding formula in Arizona is based off of equalization and is based off the number of students, if your assessed value doesn't dramatically change and the number of students doesn't dramatically change, there is nothing then that is going to dramatically change in your budget. So I think people were a little bit surprised when they saw that both Cottonwood and Clarkdale Jerome taxpayers would save a little money. So it kind of depends on what type of property you have and the value of that property. But the savings are like $9 a year. So we're not talking about huge amounts. Even if we look at the largest amount of savings, it's $98 a year. So at least in most cases, I guess I don't think of that as significant savings. We also sometimes see with consolidations where there's a little bit of increase, but in this case, it's fairly a wash. The other misperception centers around what's going to happen with the students in Clarkdale from the high school standpoint. I think there are a lot of people who just automatically assume, as we did, that they would simply go to what used to be Mingus Union High School. Right. Well, they may, and like I said, we assumed that that would be the case at least in year one. But the Clarkdale Jerome Board has, I think it's 17 different options that we were able to identify rather quickly, and paying tuition to Mingus was simply one of those. So that is kind of a misperception. I think the other misperception we've heard a lot is around the funding of that tuition. The high school students in Clarkdale Jerome right now are being taxed for by Mingus Union. They're not being taxed for by Clarkdale Jerome. So if this passes and Mingus then ceases to exist, they're no longer going to be taxing for those students. Clarkdale Jerome will be taxing for those students, basically the same amount of money, and then they will be paying, in this case, at least initially, we believe, paying tuition to the new unified high school. So, again, in most cases, that's pretty much a wash. I think we've resolved to everybody's satisfaction what happens with the bonds and the overrides. I think that there's consensus around that. But those kind of appeared to be the biggest issue. The other thing that we're getting a lot of misperception about is the timeline of what happens if the consolidation passes. So The election should be conducted on the 3rd of November. On the 18th of November, that is when the canvass of the election will happen, and that's when it's supposed to be finalized, and we'll know the results as of that date. So from the 18th of November to June 30th, assuming it passes, you'll actually have 3 boards. The Cottonwood board will continue to exist. The Mingus board will continue to exist. And they have that 7-month window to terminate their school districts. Now think about that. To terminate a school district.
Big decision.
It is a big decision. Then you have this new unified district where the 5 Mingus board members and the 5 Cottonwood board members serve as a joint unified board. And then that joint unified board will actually be in charge of that new district from the time that they're sworn in all the way to December of 2022. Now, that board's format will change a little bit on July 1st because there are 3 of those Mingus board members who, 2 of them live in Clarkdale, 1 lives in Jerome, and they would not be eligible to continue on the unified district board because they won't live in the Cottonwood district.
Right.
So my office then would have to either appoint those 3 people, and that's what the pamphlet said we're anticipating doing, or the collective board could ask me to call for an election, and then the voters would be able to elect those people. And so that's going to create a little bit of an issue right there when they transition to being the only entity as opposed to having 3 different entities kind of working parallel to each other. So that's just a very different format, and there have been a lot of questions about how that would work.
Yeah, and it seems like, like I mentioned, there's a lot to this. There's so many moving parts, principals moving, teachers moving, possibly. You just mentioned it. There's board members who don't even live in the district if you go through that consolidation. So now their say is kind of taken out of the question here. But this isn't the first time that we've talked about consolidation. And I know we've only got like a minute here, so this is probably the worst question to ask you before we go to break. But just kind of quickly, and we'll touch upon it when we get back. What is the difference between this time and last time?
Well, the big difference is in '98, it was somewhat like this in the fact that the community asked to have the election. In 2008, it was state mandated. The state passed a law saying every union district in Arizona and every elementary district in Arizona would be required to vote on some kind of a unification process.
Okay. As I mentioned, there is still a lot more to talk about regarding this consolidation, and specifically one of them happens to be this big pamphlet that we were referring to as a pamphlet, although, like I said, I call it a packet. But it's got a lot of great information about it, and we'll talk about some of the information that you can find when you take a look at it if you get a chance to get your hands on it. We're going to take a quick break. County Want to be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Hi, this is Greg at Verde Solar Power. Arizona has lots of clean, renewable sunshine, and we want to help you take advantage of it with our quality solar installations, and we offer to beat any written offer on a residential solar electric system. So bring us your electric bill and let us show you how solar power will save you money. We're located conveniently here in the Verde Valley and are dedicated to helping the valley go solar. So remember, the energy solution comes up every morning.
So I just moved in with his family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
Orkin has pest control down to a science.
When your business chooses Orkin's Precision Protection Program, you get a tailored pest control program for your specific industry and environment.
Your business can benefit from over a century of experience, training, and scientific knowledge that define the Orkin man.
Maximum protection, minimum exposure, backed by one of the industry's most comprehensive guarantees.
Choose your locally owned and operated Northern Arizona Orkin and get more than an exterminator. Get an expert.
I want to welcome you back here to Countywide. On today's show, we're talking consolidation, and my guest in studio today is Yavapai County School Superintendent Tim Carter. Mr. Carter, we've talked about a lot, but now we are finally going to move on to this informational pamphlet that you brought in. What can people expect to find in this bad boy?
Well, there's 55 pages, which tells us there's an awful lot of information in there. And the reason that it's so long is that the statute requires that we provide all that information to voters. And we've tried to be as balanced as we possibly can be. My office obviously has no view on the election from the standpoint of whether people should vote yes or no. I mean, that's completely up to the voters of this area. But within the pamphlet, here's what you're going to find. You're going to find information about what the boundaries of the districts would look like. Effectively, you would be going from 3 districts down to 2. It talks about the impact on governance, and we've kind of talked about the impact of the governing board. There is quite a bit of information in there about budget and finance. The legislation is very clear that we're supposed to say, here's what it is now, and here's what we anticipate that it might be. There's information in there about all 4 of the districts that are impacted, Mingus, Clarkdale Jerome, Cottonwood, Oak Creek, and the Valley Academy of Career and Technology Education. There's a sample ballot for Mingus voters, for Cottonwood, Oak Creek voters, and for the Mingus portion of Clarkdale Jerome. And realize that people who live in the Cottonwood Oak Creek School District are going to be voting on 2 ballot questions, because they're voting both as a voter in Cottonwood and as a voter in Mingus. And even though many of them may vote the same in both of those, there are some situations that people have articulated to us where they might want to vote yes on this one and no on this one. And too much time to describe what that might look like, but that is a possibility. I would ask people to focus on what does a yes vote mean and what does a no vote mean. What are the effects? And we've tried to put those in bullet points where they're easy to understand. There are some great maps in there that show you what we have now and what those districts would look like afterwards. There are some community arguments in favor of consolidation and community arguments opposed. I would suggest to you that a lot of that is opinion and what people personally believe, and that's fine, but people should certainly read that. It gives you a flavor of both sides, I think. The school district profiles are there. The legal descriptions are there. I don't know that people are going to spend a lot of time with that because those are legal descriptions, but the law requires that we provide it. And then there's some very important voter information that actually comes from Yavapai County about getting registered, getting the ballot. And by the way, registration is still open.
Right.
And you can still request an early ballot if you wish it. And then polling places and vote centers. And lots of contact information in there. Let me also suggest to folks 2 other things. One is our website has this document. It's ycesa.com.
Yes.
ycesa.com. And let me give my cell number. I've been giving this to anybody. If people have a question, they can call me and we'll talk. So my cell number is 928-925-6560. And if they ask me a question I don't know the answer to, I'll get them to whoever the best person is to answer that question.
So Mr. Carter said it. If you can't get a physical version of this copy, visit ycesa.com or give his office a call or his cell phone a call. It's always great to have you in here, Mr. Carter. It's I always feel like I learn something new whenever we talk.
Well, I always enjoy it. Thanks for having me.
Well, again, the consolidation people are currently voting on this, so if you are unsure about which way you want to lean, there is an informational packet. We have a few here in studio. If you want to come by, of course, please wear a mask. But if not, visit ycesa.com or give Mr. Carter a call if you have any questions. Tim, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's going to do it for this episode of Countywide. I want to thank you for watching and listening. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you again next time.